Welcome to our channel. Don't forget to click subscribe button to see more content like this. Today we will tell about John Norman Collins, responsible for the Michigan murders, namely highly publicized killings of young women committed between 1967 and 1969. John Norman was born in 1947 in Windsor, Ontario, Canada. Although there is not much information about his past, it's documented that he committed his first murder on July 10, 1967. In the early 60s, hippie style was widely adopted among young people. Eastern Michigan University students were also enjoying the freedom of coming of age on their campus, which had wide open spaces and was full of trees. Mary Flasher was a young girl who had just started college. Once she suddenly disappeared, and her roommate, worried that Mary had not returned home, called Mary's family and informed them that she had not returned home. The family tried to contact the police, but the police were dismissive, stating that most college students tended to disappear for days after partying because they get drunk. However, this was not a situation that suited Mary's character. That's why the police decided to pursue the investigation. An eyewitness had seen a blue and grayish car approaching Mary several times and trying to talk to her, but Mary kept responding by nodding her head, and the car drove away. For a long time, the police could not make any progress about Mary. However, on August 7, 1967, while two young children were playing in a field in the town of Superior, they witnessed something strange. Hearing a car horn, the children went towards where the sound came from. As the car drove away, what the children found were pieces of rotting flesh belonging to a human. The clothes found next to the body belonged to Mary. The autopsy revealed that she had been stabbed approximately 30 to 40 times in a frenzy to death. 2 days after the body was found, one of the funeral home staff stated that a handsome young man came to him and wanted to take a photo of Mary. Although the employee was shocked by this situation, the young man who made the request said that Mary was a family friend and that he would keep the photo he took as a souvenir. When he was told that this was impossible, he just shrugged his shoulders and left. The receptionist at the door explained that he was driving a bluish Chevrolet. After hearing about the incident, local people put pressure on the police and wanted to know who this person was. This incident instilled fear in many people in the neighborhood. As a matter of fact, since no new murders took place for about a year, people were a little more relaxed. But this would change on July 2, 1968. Joan Skell was a 20-year-old young woman studying at the University of Michigan. She had been out late in the evening of July 2, 1968, and was trying to return home by hitchhiking because she could not find a bus. 5 days later, Joan's body was found by a group of workers at a construction site. According to the autopsy report, Joan was raped and brutally stabbed to death. The interesting part is that although Joan had been dead for several days, it turned out that she was left where she was found much less than 24 hours ago. At the same time, Joan was smothered in the miniskirt she was wearing. Police had no clues, so an $8,000 reward was offered to find the killer. While the incident was still being investigated, everyone was trying to find out who the murderer was, and the possibility of this person being among them was making everyone lose sleep. One of Joan's friends saw the car she was in while hitchhiking and reported it to the police. However, although the police tried to investigate the car, they could not come to any conclusion. Maybe the killer hid the car. But then, unexpectedly, eyewitnesses were revealed. The two witnesses said they saw Joan with John Norman Collins on the college campus the day she disappeared. Although the police interrogated John, he denied knowing Joan. After all, no matter how eyewitnesses tried to describe John, there were countless male students at the University of Michigan with brown hair and white skin. The police were convinced that this maniac killer was not John and released him. Meanwhile, the nightmare continued. A young woman was found dead, shot in the head. A body of 23-year-old University of Michigan law student Jane Mixer was found in a cemetery. However, she was not dismembered like the previous victims. At first, the police did not realize that the killer was a different person. However, 4 days after the incident, another woman was found dead, which clearly showed that there was a serial killer in the town. The new victim matched the way the previous victims were killed. This new victim, found near where Joan Schell's body was found, was a 16-year-old girl named Marilyn Skelton. She had received serious blows to her head and body. Marilyn, whose relations with her family were strained, was known to be a drug addict and dealer. Part of the young girl's shirt was stuffed into her windpipe, and she was probably beaten with a leather strap. To make matters worse, detectives found a tree branch about 20 centimeters from the body. After the emergence of this pure evil, the only thing the townspeople focused on was finding this maniac killer. A maniac they were looking for walked unnoticed every day among the victims' families, friends, and police, and no one was aware that they were among pure evil. The only question in mind was who would be the next victim, and this question was answered exactly 1 month later. On April 15, 1969, the body of the youngest victim ever, 13-year-old Dawn Bassam, was found on the side of a deserted road. Dawn was half naked and had been raped. She was strangled with a black electrical cord, and her breasts were nearly cut off. Dawn was reported missing after not returning home after visiting friends the previous evening. The police launched a massive search for her clothes, and a girl's clothes were found in the barn of an abandoned farm not far away. A piece of the cable used to strangle the girl was also there in the barn. According to the police's findings, this was definitely a place the killer frequented. Dawn was last seen walking on the railway tracks to take a shortcut on her way back home, but then she was dragged to this farm by the killer. A few weeks after the incident, the farmhouse was set on fire and burned. When the police arrived at the scene, they encountered 5 lilacs lined up on the road. The killer seemed to want to give a message to the police. There was probably a lilac lined up for each person sacrificed. The incident was causing increasing panic in the town, and the police were now under increased pressure. Even though the townspeople did their best to help, their clues were not enough. Some people in the town even consulted a medium to find the murderer, but no results were achieved. On June 9, 1969, 3 young men who went for a walk on an unused farm found the body of a girl in her 20s. The victim was Alice Callum, who was studying in the design department at the University of Michigan. Traces of rape and stabbing were also found on the victim. Alice was last seen leaving a party in the early hours of Sunday. She probably met her killer on her way home and agreed to give him a ride home. On July 23, 1969, the police encountered another missing person. 18-year-old student Karen Sue did not return to the dormitory. The police immediately intervened and learned that Karen had last gone to the city center at noon to buy a wig. A manager of the wig store recognized Karen from the photo the police showed him and said that she got on the back of a man on a motorcycle at the exit and drove away. Meanwhile, another female student said that a person on a motorcycle offered to give her a lift, but she did not accept it. Police now had a good description of the suspect, but they still couldn't find him. On July 27, a doctor and his wife found Karen's body in a forest stream while they were out for a walk. A body had been raped, beaten, and strangled in the same way. At the same time, her underwear was stuffed in her mouth. And this incident would now be the most important evidence to reveal the identity of the killer. During the evidence examined by forensic medicine, it was determined that there were some hair residues in the underwear found. After hearing about this situation, Sheriff Harvey immediately ordered all news to be banned. This was because the police had developed a theory that the killer returned to the bodies again. But although there were 2 previous attempts to hide the news, enthusiastic news hunters somehow managed to find out about the incident and spread it to everyone. That night, police surrounded Karen's location, and a lifeless mannequin was left in place of the body. A model was designed just like a corpse, with makeup applied. Afterwards, they set an ambush around, hoping that the killer would come. Shortly after midnight, one of the police officers saw a man running in the creek bed, but since it was raining heavily, he wasn't exactly noticeable. At this time, he tried to use his radio to inform other officers, but the radio signal was not working due to bad weather conditions. So, once again, the murderer managed to escape from the police quite fortunately. Even though the police were very angry about this whole incident, they still had an important clue: human hair found in underwear. After the incident, one of the campus police officers, Larry Mathewson, became obsessed with the identity of the man on the motorcycle because he suspected his college friend, John Norman Collins. Unable to suppress her suspicion any longer, she went to the wig shop with a photo of John, and the woman said that the person in the photo was the motorbike man. Later, when Larry showed the photo to the female student and received the same answer from her, John Norman Collins was taken for questioning by the police. However, he was released again due to lack of evidence. Collins' uncle, David Leake, was a corporal-ranked police officer and helped Collins and treated him like a father. While David was on vacation with his family, John was looking after his house and dog. On July 29, 1969, David returned from vacation and went down to the basement of his home to find a black spray-painted area on the floor. He was disturbed by this situation, and as he started talking about the situation with his wife, his phone rang. An officer named Sergeant Chris Walters asked to speak to him and said, "That's your nephew, John Collins. He is the prime suspect in these mixed murders." David was shocked at first and couldn't believe it, hiding the situation from his wife. He went down to the basement of the house at night and scraped off some of the paint. There was a stain that looked like blood under the paint. Next morning, David went to the police station to report his findings. Later the same day, laboratory staff came to the house and examined the stain, but it turned out that the stain was not blood but varnish. Still, they couldn't understand why someone would have painted this polished stain with black paint. While they were thinking about this, one of the employees noticed something more interesting: human hair clippings. David said his wife shaved the kid's hair. Later, when a laboratory worker informed David about the evidence in his underwear, he was shocked. Laboratory staff immediately took a sample. They also noticed 9 stains in the basement that proved to be human blood. In the afternoon, the captain and David searched John's house. They pointed out to him that he was the prime suspect. As they detailed the evidence against him, John immediately burst into tears. The cops were expecting a confession, but John quickly came to them and denied knowing Karen, and was subsequently arrested. During the search in John's room, no solid evidence was found regarding the murders. Arnold Davis, John's roommate, told the police that he had a bag full of women's clothes at home, but later took this box out of the house. Davis also mentioned that John was stealing. Ultimately, John Norman Collins' trial took place on June 2, 1970. John was found guilty only of Karen's murder because it was impossible to find sufficient evidence in the other cases. The prosecution's evidence was based on hair and blood stains found in the basement. As a matter of fact, the hair in his underwear matched the hair in the basement. At the same time, one of the neighbors reported hearing muffled sounds from the basement. During the trial, John claimed that he was innocent, like all sociopaths. But on August 19, 1970, the jury unanimously found him guilty, and he was sentenced to life imprisonment. While the Michigan murderer, who was sentenced to at least 20 years of hard labor, continues to serve his sentence at the age of 76, he still continues to claim that he did not know Karen and did not kill anyone.